What did you expect? Welcome, Sonny. Make yourself at home. Marry my daughter. You've got to remember that these are just simple farmers. These are people of the land. The common clay of the New West. You know. Morons.
Hey, Andrew, Leigh Anne, can I ask you guys a question?
Sure.
Where are all the white women at?
Well, there's one right here.
What is going on, all you rustlers, cutthroats, murderers, bounty hunters, desperados, mugs, pugs, thugs, nitwits, halfwits, dimwits, vipers, snipers, conmen, Indian agents, Mexican bandits, muggers, buggers, bushwhackers, hornswogglers, horse thieves, bull dykes, train robbers, bank robbers, ass kickers, shit kickers, and methodists. Welcome to Sleazebag Cinema.
Dun, 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 dun.
I am one of your hosts, Mike Jamison. With me, as always, is my co-host, Andrew Gross.
What'd it be?
And for the first time on the Sleazebag Cinema podcast, we have a guest. We have a special guest. I'm so excited.
The virgin guest.
Yay! There she is. Our special guest is Leigh Anne. Leigh Anne, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Now, when I put out I almost said email. When I put on Twitter and Facebook that I was creating the show with Andrew, you were one of the first people to get in contact with me and said, have to be on the episode that you do Blazing Saddles. So why is that? Why is that?
This is the first movie you can never make today that I remember watching. And I watched it with my dad. I was maybe 7. And I didn't get all the jokes back then. But obviously the physical comedy, I understood. And I bet my father and I have watched it 75 times since then
that's great.
together.
That's great.
That's great.
So, Andrew, when do you think was the first time you watched Blazing Saddles, or what memories do you have? Because I think when you and I were discussing doing this, obviously this was one of the titles that came up. This is always, like Leigh Anne said, even in just pop culture, in the ether out there, it's always out there that this is one of the movies that you could never make today. So what are your memories?
Growing up...
Did your mom bring you to this one too?
This is a long-winded story, so I'll try my best to be concise. But growing up, we'd never had cable. I didn't get cable in my house till I was 17. So we were visiting... And another thing, so even though without cable, there was often something of adult content. Now, again, I think I might have told you this before, Mike, but I have 4 older siblings, and the closest sibling I have is 6 or 7 years older than me. So I was very much the baby. So when anything, even remotely, even on network TV came on that was adult-oriented, I was, sent out of the room or sent to bed. So... I remember traveling. My father's family lived in Cincinnati, and they had cable, and all the boys were going to sit around and watch Blazing Saddles. And I don't know what happened, maybe because my mom wasn't within earshot or anything. I was not kicked out of the room, so I got to watch it in all its R-rated glory. At a very, I'm going to say 11 or 12 years old. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
And
it was before I even saw... That was, as we talked before, Mike, like 81 was a very significant year. So I got to see Blazing Saddles, and my mom took me to Road Warrior. So actually, Road Warrior was after Blazing Saddles. I know that for a fact.
You truly became a fan that year of 1981. I'm saying wow because I think Leigh Anne and I were talking before we started to record. We both saw it before we were 10, right, Leigh Anne?
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's...
But mine was the opposite. I was not kicked out of rooms with adults. Do you guys remember a show called The Young Ones?
Oh, yeah, I remember it.
British show, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I watched it at 11 o'clock every Sunday night with my father. And I was young. So they never shielded us from anything like that in our house. Words are just words.
Yeah.
So we didn't worry too much about it.
Well,
Man,
I think...
if I may ask, so just for reference, my parents were much older, so to speak, than like all my fellow grade schoolers. Like if their parents were like 35, 33, my parents were in their mid 40s. My parents had me very late in their life. So I think that certainly had something to do with the fact that they were much more old fashioned growing up in the Depression era, no lie.
Yeah.
Was your and Mike tells me stories of what his parents did with him, and I attribute that to the fact that they were that about my math. His parents, Mike, what are we 4 years apart in age?
I
5
think
years,
so. My parents they came of age
but I think
in like the late 60s, early 70s.
yeah. So what I'm driving at is me and Mike aren't far apart in age, but I think his parents, we did the math once, were
Yeah.
at least a decade, maybe 12 years younger than my parents. So I think there was a whole different way of raising kids. So Leigh Anne, just out of curiosity, do you, if you were 10, would you know about how old your parents would be at that point?
If I was 10, my parents were 31.
So they were very hip. Okay, that to me again continues to fill my theory that kids raised with parents younger than mine, which was just about everybody I've ever met, were much more allowed to see and do things that
Yeah.
were verboten for me, for sure.
Well, and we're Gen X. We raised ourselves basically.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I think it brings up a bigger, it's not a question, but the first 3 episodes that we've done, the movies haven't exactly been, you could say, classics, but in a way just that, yes, we remember them from the early 80s,
Yeah.
and they're kind of cult classics, and like we've said, they're jiggle movies.
mhm.
They're movies that, especially Gen X, remembers watching, probably either sneaking behind their parents' back because they weren't as lucky to have like some of our parents, or at a
Right.
friend's house. So this is like the first movie that is actually, I mean, it's in the Library of Congress as being culturally relevant.
Right.
You're
This
kidding.
isn't, yeah, no, it is. I mean, this is an actual, when we say classic, this is a classic. And
none of the movies that you guys have talked about so far could have ever been made without Blazing Saddles.
that is true.
It was the one that broke, quite literally, the walls.
So
Yeah.
just real quick, Mike, you're the resident historian. This movie came out when?
1974. So we're going to the first 3 movies we did came out in 84. Now we're traveling
Now we're going back.
10
Okay.
years back to 1970, the year I was born, 1974.
Now by 74 standards, was it a big hit?
It was. It's one of the first movies, not first. It was then one of the few movies that actually made over $100 million.
In 1974.
Yeah, up to that point,
Holy
it had maybe
smokes.
been this is before Jaws, so it maybe been The Godfather.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure Gone with the Wind, with all the times it had been re-released,
Sure.
Snow White, and this movie was re-released in 75. They re-released it again in 79. And I think Mel Brooks said they re-released it in 75 because Warner Brothers didn't have a big movie to put out in the summer, so they just re-released this. But yeah, this was it was a big hit. And Leigh Anne and I were talking about it. It's 1974. Mel Brooks was on a heater, as was
I was ready to go there. Yes. Go,
as well as Gene
go.
Wilder and Madeline Kahn. 1974. This came out first, and then later in the year, Young Frankenstein came out.
The same year?
Same year. They both came out in 74.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think they're both obviously parodies and also homages to the Western and to also horror movies. But I think they couldn't be both more different, because I read before this episode, I was reading up on Blazing Saddles, and I read somewhere, I think a reviewer said he gave it a bad review. And he said, "Oh, it looks it looks like they just got a camera and pointed and shot. It looks like a TV show." And watching it, I was like, both Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein are like a collection of skits, in all honesty. And I'm not saying that to disparage them, but this Blazing Saddles does look more TV-like. Whereas Young Frankenstein, it's in black and white, and Young Frankenstein, I believe, was up for Best Picture. I know it was up for Best Screenplay. I think it was up for Best Picture also. And they're both funny in a different way. I mean, obviously, Young Frankenstein isn't I don't think we'd be doing Young Frankenstein on Sleazebag Cinema. Not because it's not a funny movie, but it could be made today. There's
Yeah,
a
you could make that one.
Broadway show of of Young Frankenstein.
Mhm.
There's
But yeah,
no
I mean,
Broadway show of Blazing Saddles.
no, I think he
No.
tried. I think he actually tried, but
It wouldn't
I,
surprise me.
no, yeah, but I just that would have to be way, 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 way off Broadway. So yeah, I mean, as we always say, I mean, we're not going to sit here and just go through the movie scene by scene, but let's get into it. Famously, Richard Pryor. Well, it was, first of all, Mel Brooks didn't come up with this. It was actually a screenplay beforehand by Andrew Bergman, wrote a screenplay that Mel Brooks saw and liked, and instead of just acquiring it and then rewriting it, he asked Andrew Bergman to come in with him, and he said he wanted to get that feeling because he was on that show of shows in the 50s. He had been writing movies himself. He wanted to have that feeling of a writer's room again. So he asked Andrew Bergman. I believe they had another writer, and they had Richard Pryor come in because they also wanted Richard Pryor to play the role of the sheriff. And famously, Richard Pryor, and there's different stories. Some say that Richard Pryor just didn't want to do it. He was then like one of, if not the most famous stand-up, but it was before he really hit big with movies. So there's some stories that say he just didn't think he'd be able to do it. There's a story while I was watching the extras that says they were in a writing session and they were waiting for Richard Pryor, and they got a phone call from him, and he said he was in Detroit, and they said, "What are you doing in Detroit?" And he said, "I don't know." So Warner Brothers also was a little wary of having him be the lead in a major motion picture.
Yeah, they literally could not insure him.
Yep.
So.
And like we were talking, and I don't know, I'd like to get your guys'
I'm
opinion.
sorry. Sorry. Apologize to both of you. You're just throwing stuff out here, and I'm like not getting off the floor and chiming in. So
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry to back up this tape a little bit. So he did Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles in 1 year. Holy shit! Now was this Mel Brooks' first theatrical picture?
No, he had done the producers before then.
The producers was prior to that. Okay.
And Blazing Saddles only took 3 months to film.
Yep.
They did it March through May.
In 73, I believe.
73, right? I think, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just share something on my mind. So like I'm trying to think that. Okay, so let me say this. Like I never heard of M. Night. I'll butcher his last name.
Shyamalan.
You know, to me he came out of nowhere and made Sixth Sense. I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? I've never heard of him. He gets somehow bankrolled to do a major motion picture, gets Bruce Willis starring. I mean, good on him. It was a fantastic movie. So I'm trying to think, did Mel Brooks just kind of come out of the woodwork and all of a sudden he got a major picture and big stars? So I don't know his history.
No, he wrote quite a bit in the 60s.
Yep. Okay,
and
is that true? Okay.
Really kind of hit it big early 70s.
Gotcha.
Yeah, when I said your show of shows, do you know what that is? Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So in honestly. The 50s, it was a live like TV variety show, and it was Sid Caesar, Imogene Coco, a bunch of people.
Oh, okay. Yes. I know what you're talking about.
Mel I almost said Mel Gibson. Mel Brooks was one of the writers. I think Woody Allen even wrote. The writer's room was like legendary on your show of shows. Yeah. So that's how he got his start. And then, he wrote through the 50s, 60s. The Producers, I think The Producers was a pretty big hit when it came out. I mean, I can't remember if it was a stage play first and then he made it a movie, or if it was.
No, I think the movie came first.
Was it the movie that came first?
Is that right? Okay, interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, like Leigh Anne said, then the early 70s. I mean, with Blazing Saddles, back to back, Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, like shot him into the stratosphere, and then he followed it up with all the other stuff. I don't
remember when History of the World was made, but
that had to be 80s.
It had to be late 70s, maybe.
I think it's 79 because he did like High Anxiety. Yep.
Great movie.
Yep.
It's good to be the king.
Okay. Yeah. I'm catching up to the conversation.
No, so it's okay.
Richard Pryor, he was not, prior to this, was not a known TV or movie star, correct? He hadn't done anything. He was mostly a stand-up, Saturday Night Live known type guy.
He was more known for stand-up. I mean, he was
Okay.
big in stand-up. He was probably the biggest stand-up comedian at the time, but he just hadn't crossed over yet into movie stardom.
Okay. First movie I ever think I'm ever seeing him in was Silver Streak. It may not be, I'm not saying that's his first, but that's where I remember seeing Richard Pryor, was a movie called, which he did with Gene Wilder, by the way.
Yeah, I think his movies with Gene Wilder kind of shot him into superstardom.
So okay. So he wrote on this movie.
It definitely wasn't Superman 3.
For sure. So, all right, I can't keep this question to you two any longer. So the fact that Richard Pryor was a writer on this,
Mhm.
does it make a lot of the humor okay? Because a man of color wrote it?
It's funny you mention that, because watching the behind the scenes stuff, Mel Brooks said that Richard Pryor he wrote most of the stuff for Mongo.
Oh, really?
He wrote most of the Mongo scenes, and there's a lot of like cut Mongo scenes also. And it's funny because looking at Richard Pryor, I mean, in the 80s, after Richard Pryor was like a superstar, he had, and in the late 70s too, Richard Pryor had his own sketch comedy show. It didn't last long. And then in the 80s, he had a kids' TV show, which is insane to think about, because this was after all the drug stuff and you know, the setting himself on fire stuff. But
when did he blow himself up? Do you know that?
Early 80s.
Okay.
I believe. So he had Pryor's Place in the early 80s, was a kids TV show, and I could see that mentality. I remember like bits and pieces of it from when I was younger, but I can see that, and I could totally see him writing the Mongo scenes. And that, like I was saying, I was watching there's a lot of deleted scenes with Cleavon Little. It's supposed to be him trying to get Mongo out of town. I'm in the movie, you just see the one Candygram scene, but there's a couple other ones that are deleted, and they're very like Looney Tunes.
Okay.
In conception and just execution. And that's what I was saying to Leigh Anne. I mean, Cleavon Little, obviously they wanted Richard Pryor to play the role of the sheriff. I can't, just with Richard Pryor in the early 70s, at the stand-up that he was, I can't totally see him playing the sheriff and getting the audience on his side. And I think that's what Cleavon Little was able to do. And Cleavon Little is basically playing Bugs Bunny in the whole movie. Yeah. I mean, there's even the scene where they play the
theme song. Yeah.
The theme song, but he's playing it through the whole, where he's winking and he's talking right to the audience. But yeah, I was going
to bring that up. Fourth wall. That was ahead of its time.
Yeah, I don't know if Richard Pryor would have been able to pull that off. And I think you need to be able to do that because of all the stuff we're going to talk about that you couldn't do today if you didn't have Cleavon Little in the middle of it and the audience being on his side and feeling sympathy for him and rooting for him also. So I don't know if Richard Pryor could have pulled that off in the early 70s.
I don't know that he could have played it.
Okay.
This is weird to say, straight enough. Like, you had to play it. It was sarcastic, but it had to come across as straight. So.
No, you're right, and because and that's one of the main things is that the town don't know that they're idiots, and they don't know that they're being made fun of right to their face.
I am so talented, and they are so dumb.
They are so dumb. And I admitted, I always bring these up with these movies, and all three of us are huge MASH fans. I bring it up with MASH. These were like the characters I was drawn to, like the Cleavon Littles, like the Gene Wilders in this movie, like the Hawkeyes, who were able to be funny and be funny right in front of the people who were the bullies or who were the people in authority.
And Klinger too.
And that's what I wanted to be, and that's what I looked up to.
Klinger was absolutely that way.
And that's what I looked up to. And that's probably why this was one of the movies when I was a kid that stuck with me. And it's funny because Cleavon Little, I know he had a career on Broadway, and he was in.
Yeah, he was an established actor.
Yeah, you would see him in movies and stuff, but he never became a big superstar. And this, this is what I'm sure most people would think of him.
Yeah, this is pretty much what I remember him for.
Well, I'd say he nailed it. I mean, I think he was hysterical in the movie. He just absolutely nailed it. So I'm going to be curious to see the ZMED-O-METER scores later on, because he makes fun of the people and the fact that Richard Pryor wrote on it. I'm like, does it get a pass?
Wow, I
I'm
mean,
maybe not a full pass, full pardon, but I don't know. I'm still not
Oh, I know
settled on
mine.
my ZMED-O-METER score on this one yet. But let's continue.
No, I was gonna say you're bringing it up. I mean, this is what, and I'm sure people listening to this, they're not coming at it blind, so they know what we're talking about is just the liberal use of
there's more
of the N word.
This is like a Tarantino movie. There's so many N words.
Well, yeah, and that's a great segue into something I was talking about with Tarantino. You get to, I feel like, or at least I do, I get to a point where I'm like, okay, man, we get it, but I think you're going a little bit overboard. Even if it's Samuel L. Jackson saying it, I don't think I need to hear another N-word. Like, it's like, we got it with the first 50 times you said it.
Whereas Blazing Saddles said it to make fun of it.
Exactly.
Well,
yep.
That's a good point. Very, very good point.
No. I mean, Blazing Saddles is pointing out right to your face how horrible this is, but it's making you laugh. And even last night I'm watching, this is probably the first time I watched the movie, maybe 5, 6, 7 years, so I'm watching it with my adult perspective as I put my air quotes in the air, but I'm still laughing at it. I mean, the famous scene with the old lady.
Yeah.
And see, we can all sit here and laugh, and I don't feel guilty about it because it's not. It's a commentary on her. And when you hear,
well, especially the fact it was like a 90-year-old woman.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a shock value of it was like pretty grand. I'm like, holy smokes, because I actually forgot about that scene. When I rewatched it today, I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot some of the. I remember
the great thing about Blazing Saddles, it does not discriminate. They make fun of everyone. Absolutely everyone. From rednecks to homophobes to racists. They make fun of everybody. So.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, they even say it at the end where they said these guys, they'll help you if you just promise them that they can have a plot of land. And when they first say no, and then they're like,
we'll take
okay, but not the Irish.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take the Irish too.
I mean, not even Kansas City's safe in this movie, so
Yeah, there is ample use of the F word.
Yes.
It's not the F word that you're thinking of. I mean,
not
I'll
the
say
4-letter
one.
Did
you know the only
fuck.
reason
It's not fuck,
according to what I read,
the other F word
that they got an R rating is because of the scene where no, it's not
Mongo
even
punches out the horse.
an audible fuck.
I'm joking.
When Hedley Lamar comes out of the bathroom in the commissary and he mouths "what the fuck," that's why they got the R rating.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't even hear it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. See,
no kidding.
That's what they're worried about, right? Well, Mel Brooks brought it up. He said, it was a Western written by a bunch of Jews and a black guy that's using the N-word and but he, like Mel Gibson, no, I just said Mel Gibson. Mel Brooks straight up said it, where he said, I wanted to write it because I wanted to make fun of people's prejudices. And he said, it was supposed to be 1874, but we're being anachronistic, and we're using 1974 sayings and stuff like that. But he's like, we're gonna throw it right in their face, and we're gonna make fun of prejudices, and this is how we're gonna do it. So they knew what they were doing.
That doesn't see it as sarcasm.
Oh, no question.
Oh, of course, yeah. And I'm sure there was a lot. I'm sure there's a lot of people now who still don't see it as sarcasm and don't understand what they're going for.
So let me throw out a question. As we kind of, Mike, you pointed out, it's a bunch of skits. So, what do you if you had to chop out one part, you was like your favorite skit is which? And I'll go first. Mine was when they the rednecks. It's the beginning of the movie, and I forgot that too. It's like, give us a song, and they're like, I get no kick from. I mean, I'm just pissing myself that they're doing, and the guys in the background are going, ooh. I'm just laughing my ass off. And the look on the redneck's face is like, what the hell is that shit? That's my favorite skit of the movie. So what's y'all's?
That's funny that you bring that up because with this movie, I remember most of the Cleavon Little and Gene Wilder parts.
Okay.
And I totally forgot that beginning part with the
Oh my,
quicksand and everything
oh
else.
my God. That's when they do that song, and I just crying laughing.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that. But real fast, to get back to what we were talking about with the ratings and stuff, the fart scene,
That was the
people
very
got more
first
offended with that.
part
Oh, with the campfire.
in a movie.
Yeah.
The campfire scene.
Yep.
Yeah. In a movie.
What?
Yes.
That's great.
But more people were getting offended at that than using the N-word in about 65% of the movie.
This
But
is
I'm sorry,
one of
go on,
those.
Leigh Anne, what was
I
your
started laughing when the Warner
favorite
Brothers
part?
logo came on, and I stopped laughing when I turned it off. But the last 5 minutes,
All right, that's fair.
I cannot contain myself. When it's Dom DeLuise and the dancing and the
Yeah.
I'm working for Mel Brooks, and punches the guy out. So that's probably my very favorite. But there's not a single moment of this movie that I don't love.
Okay. It doesn't. You're right. It has great pace, but I don't know why. But that beginning scene with the singing, oh my gosh, that just kills me every time.
Yeah, I gotta say mine is probably I would say like the middle part of the movie. As soon as Bart meets Jim in the cell, and they become friends. I mean, the chemistry between Cleavon Little and Gene Wilder just jumps right off the screen. And it's funny because Gene Wilder was the third. He was not the first or the second choice. They had.
Oh my God! I can't wait to hear this.
They had cast. It's not anybody super famous. They had cast someone before him and started filming. Well, they had offered him. Gene Wilder said Mel Brooks offered him the role of Hedley Lamar, and he said, "I don't think I'm right for it."
Yeah.
So he didn't do it. And this is
Harvey Korman was perfect,
yeah, he was perfect. And this is when they were planning Young Frankenstein. So he said, I don't think I'm good for it. And he said, what about the Waco Kid? And Mel Brooks said, we want to get like an old grizzled, possibly like an old Western actor who looks like he'd been an alcoholic, who has like tan face and a leather looking face. They hired, I believe his name was Gig Young, and I'm not sure. I think I've heard that name before. He was a Western. He's a guy who starred in a lot of Westerns. He had been an alcoholic. He said he was cleaned up. They got him in there. They were filming. I think they said it was the first day of filming. And he kind of looked a little green. His skin looked a little green.
Okay.
And I think it was the scene where he's like leaning out of the bed, and it's the first time they meet. And he was getting dizzy, and he like kind of got up and he threw up, and he looked and he just looked like he wasn't going to be able to make it. So they said to him, we can't do this. Like, this isn't going to work out. They went to get somebody else, and that I can't remember who it was. That person didn't want to do it, so they finally went back to Gene Wilder and said, "Will you do this?" And he did it. So any of the scenes, that whole middle part with Cleavon Little and Gene Wilder, anytime they're together and they're like pulling their tricks and they're just getting one over.
Then I'm awake. But I'm very
comedy
puzzled.
perfection.
Yeah.
I'm very puzzled.
Oh yeah.
And Gene Wilder, I love Gene Wilder. I love him to death.
I mean, who doesn't?
And just because he can play this, he can play in Young Frankenstein, he can play Willy Wonka, and he just leaves a mark in every movie he's in, and he's hilarious. He was another one who I always I call them Prism movies, cable movies, that I watched this on Prism. I watched Young Frankenstein. Gene Wilder was he was like a big part of my childhood. Willy Wonka. he made me read the books because I loved that movie so much. But he is so great, and he could just do all these different roles, and you buy it. I mean, again, it's Gene Wilder. Do you really think Gene Wilder would be a gunfighter in the West? But I still buy it, and I love that with the look at that hand, steady as she
And Gene
comes.
Wilder
Yeah,
always
but this
makes
is
it
my
look
This is when
shooting
I shoot
hand.
with.
effortless. Like, there's some actors you can tell they're acting. It looks like he just walked onto set and started improvising. Like,
Yep. I agree with that 100%.
And you bring up some of the humor you didn't get. I was watching it obviously last night before getting ready for this, and when they're smoking, I didn't know it was a joint back then. So I was like, well, how come when he's smoking that cigarette when he gives it to him and he's like, Bart, be careful out there.
He starts talking like he's suck some helium or something.
I didn't get that when I was 8 or 9 years old.
No, I didn't either. I thought this like, oh, it's the old West. They had to roll them by hand. I didn't think anything other.
And of course, I mean the now like one of the most famous lines, and it's unfortunately very prevalent today. Where, what did you expect? Did you expect? I know I'm going to say it wrong. Did you expect good evening?
Yes.
Yeah, good evening, boy. Did you expect come and marry my daughter? These
the
are
common
people of the
clay of the
land.
New
Hand.
West.
They're simple folk. You know, the common West. You know, morons. Now they say
Right.
he added that part at the end that Cleavon Little didn't know he was going to say.
From what I
So
understand,
that's a
the
genuine
major
reaction when he
actors,
laughs at the end.
Mel Brooks told them to improv. So there were scenes that were never written. They just started ripping together and came up with some of the funniest shit on any movie ever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not surprising with Mel Brooks. So we're talking about the actors and stuff. We kind of mentioned Harvey Korman. I wanted to mention Harvey Korman. And as I said, 1974, watching Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles started my lifelong crush on Madeline Kahn, one of the funniest actresses I think you will ever find. And it's a shame that she died so young and she was another one who was such a part of my childhood with Young Frankenstein, with her. She was on The Muppet Show, and she was one of those first people who she could be genuinely laugh out loud funny. Like she was right in there and this was a different time. So she could be right in there with the guys and be funny, but she could also be sexy. She could sing, she could dance. She could do it all. And she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for this movie. She didn't win, but she was nominated
For Blazing Saddles.
Yeah, and it's now you're
Wow.
saying that Mel Brooks even says it. He's like, he was like, I was more surprised than anybody because usually the Academy doesn't recognize these types of roles. He said I was happy for her. She was nominated the year before for, I think, a dramatic role. But he said, I didn't think, and this was the first movie that she worked with him because he tells a story when he brought her in for the audition. He said, can you lift up your skirt a little bit? I want to see your legs. And she said, I'm not doing that. And she thought he was that kind of person. He said, I'm happily married. He was like, I just want to make sure that, because we want to do like a Marlene Dietrich kind of riff where you sit on a chair. He's like, so I just want to make sure that you have the legs for it. So then she like whipped her skirt aside and showed off her legs. So this was the first time that she worked with him. But she's
stuck with, because I think she was in History of the World, if I recall.
She's in High Anxiety also, I think. Yeah, she became one of his kind of like one of his repertory players. Yep. But yeah, she and Harvey Korman. Harvey Korman's great. I mean, and again, I knew him growing up just from Carol Burnett.
That's where I knew him from. I was just ready to ask you that question. Okay.
I thought you were going to say the Star Wars Christmas special. Because he's in that also.
Right. No, but I knew we knew Harvey Korman, and for some reason my brain was going to Sesame Street, which I knew wasn't right. But
everybody was
on the Muppet Show. I think he was on the Muppet Show, but yeah,
who wasn't? But yeah,
Mama's Family.
Maybe I'm thinking, I don't know why, but I think wasn't Morgan Freeman some of the regular on Sesame Street?
Morgan Freeman was on the Electric Company.
Oh,
he was Easy Reader. I do like
Okay.
Harvey. I do like Harvey Korman at the end after he gets shot when he
Such
falls down. And he's like, "How did he do all those stunts with such small feet?"
And then, of course, because it always goes back to MASH,
But it hit.
Alex Karras.
Yeah, Alex Karras, and I
He
think
played Mongo.
I don't. Yeah, Alex Karras was in MASH. He basically plays
I think
Mongo.
it's Springtime.
Yeah, he basically played Mongo in the MASH episode he was in.
Yeah.
I think it is Springtime.
says-
I can't remember his name, but he refers to himself in the third person. But,
Wait a minute. He wasn't the. I know I'm wrong, but I'm thinking the episode where I think it's Trapper has to fight someone. He's like,
No,
doctor,
no, it's not
need
that one.
hands. He wasn't that big guy.
No, this
He
one,
picks
it was
up
the one
Frank
where
Burns and
Klinger
spins him.
gets married.
And Hot Lip says, "You can't spin a major."
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm a bad MASH fan because I can't remember what his character's name was, but he's basically playing Mongo.
Mongo. Okay.
He's referring to himself in the third person. He kind of becomes like Hawkeye's. Hawkeye, I guess, saves his life. Hawkeye operated on him, so in gratitude to Hawkeye, he says he's indebted to him. But
Gotcha.
Alex Karras was great, and I think this was his first acting role. I'm sure when we get comments for the episode, somebody will point it out. But it had to be one of his first acting roles, and that was another one. There was, I think, somebody at the studio complained
that was
about
one of the ones they wanted to cut.
But that was one of the complaints too. Was they wanted that taken out.
Why would you cut that?
Yeah, they wanted
of
that
all the
taken
things.
out. Well, I was watching up until the end to see if they had that message that they always have, like, no animals.
Animals were harmed during the making.
And I didn't say, I don't know in the 70s what the deal was with that, because there are some stunts watching this where, the horses, the people are also taking falls.
Like
the
in
horses
a ditch,
are taking
kind
falls.
I was like, oh, that poor horse.
I don't know. Yes. Yeah. I don't know how they did the Mongo punching the horse out. Supposedly it's based on, I'm trying to think of the story now, that somebody, I don't know if they punched it or they just like got like a horse's face and like pushed it out of the way or something like that. But it's based on something that's true. I don't think somebody punched a horse out, but they kind of just like pushed a horse out of the way or something like that. But yeah,
those horses are trained.
That's one of the most memorable scenes of the movie, and it's
they
just funny
pull
that
the reins a certain way, or they say a certain word, and the horse knows to go down like that. But it was still kind of scary.
Right. Yeah, I had to believe that was trained. That's whenever they, the few times Blazes Hell is ever referenced, that's like one of the clips they always show is decking the horse.
But that is great with the Mongo just pawn in Game of Life. He makes a lot. He makes an impression for what could have been a small throwaway
and he's
role.
all the way through it.
He makes a big time impression.
It's not like a one scene thing.
Yeah.
You see him at the very end.
Right.
Well, I do like when he he comes into town and he goes to the saloon and everybody goes nuts and the guy runs in and he's like, Sheriff. Then he finds him. He's like, Sheriff, Mongo's going nuts, blah, blah. So
don't do that.
He goes to go out and he gets ready to put his gun on, and Gene Wilder's like, no.
That'll just make him mad.
Do that. Shooting him will just make him mad. Everybody remembers the language and, like we said, like the punching the horse out and some of the other things, but there are a lot of under the radar lines that are really good, and it's the cast that really sells them, that makes it even funnier. Going back to Madeline Kahn again, her whole song and dance, Mel Brooks wrote the songs for the movie.
Yeah.
And he said the I'm Tired song was one of the dirtiest songs he ever wrote. And as a kid, I don't think I ever really paid attention to the song, so I paid attention to it more now. And it's not like, she doesn't call attention to what she's singing to, but when you do listen to the lyrics, oh, it's hilarious. And that's her up there singing and dancing. And I had forgotten about when the guy has his feet up on the stage and she kicks his feet off. But yep, Tex Ma'am. But the whole
Yeah.
scene with her, again, with her and Cleavon Little, I mean, they just had that comedic chemistry that they could just, and even the small scenes with her and Harvey Korman when he like knocks on the door and
Well,
he's
you were
like, I
talking
just
about
want a
the
little, I just want a
songs.
little touch.
Mel Brooks wrote pretty much the lyrics for all of the songs in the movie, but the theme song,
Mm-hmm.
he didn't tell the person singing it that it was a
Yes,
comedy
yes.
because he didn't want it to sound like a comedy song.
Yep.
So it sounds like a ballad.
Yep. Yep.
Ah, yeah.
It does.
It was
I'm-
Frankie Lane. And they said, well, we want to find a Frankie Lane type of singer for this. And they couldn't find anybody. So Frankie Lane said, I want to do it. And yeah, like you said, they didn't tell him it was a comedy. So he's singing it straight. But that's perfect for the type of movie
And there
that
are
it is.
so many references to history, to other movies in this movie. Like, they actually have, you know, actors playing Germans doing Heil Hitler. They actually have Hitler.
Yes. Well, that was great. I'm glad you brought that up because that was almost one I forgot. And that was one when I was a kid that I never would have gotten. But when he walks over and they're like, "How you doing, Phil?" And he's like, "What's
And then during
what's
the
going on
food
today?" And he's
fight,
like, "Oh, they lose
if
me
you look
right
at the
after
very
bunker
back
scene."
of the commissary, he's back there doing, you know, his little Hitler dance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Mel Brooks is never going to pass up a chance to make fun of Nazis, even when they have the whole line of people waiting in line. I mean, they have the bikers, they have the Klansmen, and then they have
You talk about the bikers.
They have the Nazis.
People thought that was a goof. You can see where the handlebars are hooked to his belt. They did that on purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, because then when they're getting ready, when they're the posse, the handlebars are hooked to the horse that he's on.
That's where that. Okay, yes, that's where that came from. Right.
And like you said, they had like Slim Pickens was in the movie, and he was a famous Western actor. He had been in like thousands of Westerns before this.
He was Taggart.
They said, yeah,
was he Taggart? Or
he was Taggart.
Okay.
They said while they were filming, you know, when they were done filming for the day, the people would go back and go to their hotel rooms. He would just, because they were in the middle of the desert, he had like an RV that he had pulled up. He would just go to his RV, sit outside with, he'd make a fire, him, his dog, and he had like his Winchester rifle, and he would just sit outside hanging out.
That's kind of funny that if that was his history, that he does a movie like a parody movie.
Well, they had Slim Pickens. They had Burton Gilliam, who's like that guy. I know him from he plays like Taggart's sidekick, but I know him from this. I know him from Fletch because he's the guy in Fletch when Fletch is talking about ball bearing. It's all ball bearings now. But he's like that guy. He's been around, and it's funny because he talks in the behind the scenes stuff where he said to Cleavon Little, he's like, I don't feel comfortable saying these words to you and calling you this stuff. And Cleavon Little said to him, like, this is play acting. He's like, somebody wrote this stuff. He's like, go ahead and say it. And Slim Pickens, I think, went to him and said the same thing where he was like, I don't feel comfortable doing this. And he said, like, try to like add more stuff, make it worse. He's like, I know it's not.
And
it's not you.
It would not have been as funny
it's
if
a movie.
it was not
like,
as
so
over the
He
top.
was like, we'll be fine.
They had to make it almost cartoon for it to come across correctly.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it just makes me wonder because I can't remember as a kid. They show a scene from the TV edit with the beans where you don't hear anything. You just see them getting up and you don't hear anything. How did they cut out?
I have no idea.
All of the language for television, or what did they put in there and say? It's not just the N word; it's the F word also.
Yeah. This was ever shown on broadcast TV?
Oh, no sure, yeah, no,
it was not showing on ABC,
yeah, it was shown on broadcast TV. Like I said,
wow,
it was on Fox before Fox was Fox.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Okay. So just slight segue here. So at Mike, I'm a petrol head. So there was in the 70s and 80s, there was a guy's name was Willie T. Ribbs. He's a race car driver and he's black and he was very good.
Okay.
But of course, he was the only man of color in racing, and that was so successful. And so he dealt with a lot of shit, as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And he put out some documentary of his movie, and he asked to be called Uppity. So that had to be. I'm thinking that had to be a reference back to the Blazing Saddles line.
You know what's
That's the only
funny?
thing I could figure.
I wouldn't be surprised
They
at
got
all.
sued by Heddy Lamar for using her name.
Yes.
Wait, there's a story behind Hedley Lamar?
Yeah.
I don't know it.
Heddy Lamar.
She said it ruined her brand, or
oh, no kidding.
She wasn't even acting at that point.
But... like vaudeville or something?
No, like 30s and 40s.
So they settled with her.
Well, yeah, by the 70s,
and Mel Brooks was
acting.
Mostly excited that she had noticed. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, that line in the movie, it was before that she sued them when he says,
"Yeah,
it's 100 years. It's 100 years.
You could sue her.
100 years before you could sue her."
Oh,
we have to bring out that
so good
segue into that Mel Brooks as the governor. I mean, I love Mel Brooks. I love Mel.
I mean, Mel Brooks
just want to give Mel Brooks a hug. I would love to meet him and just give him a hug. Because he seems like such a
anything.
Not really.
Mel Brooks adjacent, anytime. Oh, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I'll watch it.
Even Life Stinks. But Mel Brooks, I just want to give him. He seems like such a great guy. He really does. He seems like a real mensch when you watch him behind the scenes, and that's how you want. That's what you want your heroes to be. Like with this movie, you watch him behind the scenes, and like I said, he's like, we're making fun of the racist. Like this is what we want to do. We're gonna make fun of the racist. And with the Heddy Lamar stuff and everything, he's like, I just told him let her sue. Just give her the money. Who cares? But
I wonder if there's some kind of was there any kind of story as to why he chose to name the character after that? Was it it can't have been a coincidence.
I think he just wanted to do it for every time that Harvey Korman gets to say Hedley. Because Harvey Korman said in the interview, and it was from I think 2001, from when they first released it on DVD, but he says there are still people, you always get these stories with actors, but he says there's still people who would call out on the street and just say, just call out Heddy, and he'd have to turn around and say Hedley. But I mean, Mel Brooks, he's so great and he's not in the movie that much, but he's really funny. And that was okay. That was one of the. Wow, you're saying you don't think he's that great?
No, I'm just saying
he's one of the.
He's not
and I forget which one.
I don't know about that.
When they line up,
he's a very memorable.
The KKK
character.
lines up. He's in there. Yeah.
Yes, you see him in the line of all that. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But you see, that was was one of the jokes when I was a kid when he's trying to put the pen back, and he says to him, "Just imagine that. Just think of your secretary," and he puts it right in. But that, of course, the scene when he's like, "Can I talk to you for a second?" And it's in Cleavon Little walks with him. He's like, "That guy is a nit."
Well, it's so funny.
He's like,
that they like with the
Can't
bell.
You see that man is a nit
when Cleavon Little was first coming in. And they do the bell on every N word, but then they just say it through the rest of the movie.
Oh, yes.
And we're talking hard R.
And then they. Well, that's John. Oh yeah, that's John Hillerman from
Higgins.
Yep, Magnum PI fame. He's one of those guys who always looked old, like in every movie
when he was young.
He always looked 47. Like he was probably like 20 in that movie, but he always looked 47. And it's funny because I always remember as a kid when I first saw him not do the English accent because I thought he was English from watching Magnum PI. I was like, wait, Higgins he's American? But yeah, I mean, just that scene where he comes into town and it's like, we want to extend you a laurel and
And
hearty
everybody's
welcome
named
to
Johnson.
our. It's just,
Yeah.
oh my god! And I forgot.
So
Yeah,
you've got the
yes, Howard
incest for the
Johnson
whole
with
town.
the one with the
'cause
one
they're all
flavor.
Johnson.
Yes, which I which I didn't get back then, and that's just a great scene too when he gets up and
Oh.
excuse me while I whip
You were
this
talking
out.
about accents, and I know we're all MASH fans here. It's like David Ogden Stiers. I never knew he didn't have the Boston accent until I saw the behind the scenes.
Yes, yes.
And then I was like, wait, it doesn't, yeah.
I think
Wait,
for
he talks like a regular person?
yes, I think for me it was Better Off Dead when he plays John Cusack's dad, and I was like, wait a minute, why is Winchester talking like a normal
Yeah.
person? I thought he was English. I thought he was English
That's
growing
what
up.
I thought
he
too.
was the
I
only
just said,
actor
okay,
on
he's another
MASH
Brit playing
that
an
did an
American,
accent.
no problem.
No. And as Andrew and I are comic book nerds, Andrew, did you know he played the Martian Manhunter in an unsold Justice
Yes.
League International pilot?
Yes.
Yes, with the green makeup and everything. As
Everything,
we
yeah.
get
My fault.
totally
Second
off like topic of Lazy
All goes
Saddles.
back to MASH.
It does. With this show, it does always it always comes back to MASH. That is very true. But yeah, I mean, I started this off with like Mel Brooks is just he'll
Yeah.
always insert himself into his movies, but he's always
But
like,
he's
just
great in them.
super funny.
It's not like he's
Yep.
doing
There's-
it for ego. He's great at the characters he plays.
There's actually a really funny cut scene, and I think it was either a cutscene or they used it for the TV versions, I guess, to extend certain things that they had to cut out. It's him when they leave when they rebuild the town. It's a scene, they see a stagecoach going in, and it's him going into the town. It's the governor, and he gets out. He's with a bunch of journalists, and he's getting out like, and he wants to do like a photo op with the townspeople. Remember, they construct like they had to make copies of the townspeople. So he's like standing there with one guy, and he's putting his arm around him. He's like, "You're really shaky, aren't you?"
Bobbleheads.
And it's funny.
Life-size.
Yeah,
bobbleheads.
really. Yep. Seriously. Yeah. But we also have
so funny.
Dom DeLuise is in this in a small scene, but listen,
never
super funny. And again, it's stuff you could not do now. When they say, I'm sorry, what do they say? And they all
steam
and
escaping.
All the actors go. He's like, it sounds like steam escaping. And that might have been the first. I mean, they say it earlier in the movie, but for me as a kid, that might have been the first time I heard that, because when he says, "I'll teach you how to," F word, and he starts saying, "That's it, watch me." But when they come in, they start fighting, and all the guys are like, "You brute!"
Yeah.
And then they go through the side, and they walk out, and he's like, "I'm parked by the commissary."
And the guy goes, "Come on, girls!" And they all go running down the stage.
Well, let's go with this. When Slim Pickens runs in, and he's like, "I'm working for Mel Brooks." He's like, "Not the face," and he hits him in the stomach. But that might have been one of my first. Yeah. Or maybe I didn't know it was Dom DeLuise because I was used to him in like the Cannonball Run movies with the goatee or the beard. So I probably didn't even know that was him. Yeah, he's underrated. I love Dom DeLuise. But yeah, I mean, do we want to get to it? I mean, we talked about it in the beginning, like with the ZMED-O-METER. So Andrew, what do you think? 1974 and 2024.
Well, what I remember, the lens I remember as a kid, this was perfectly okay. Now, again, I don't know if it was legitimized because it was Mel Brooks, because Richard Pryor was involved back then, but this was through the lens of the 70s. This was, I don't know the N-word language was that prevalent, but all the other stereotypes and phobic, so to speak, things that were done, that was par for the course. So now, obviously, today's meter, yeah, it's pegged, if not wrapping around 2 or 3 times. So I'm gonna say hard 10 absolutely for now. Back then, I don't even know if it registered on the meter because that just was the way. That was just the culture. And you said it was a big hit, so. And the most offensive thing was punching out the horse, for the day. I guess it didn't. Guess it didn't even register this med meter.
So obviously for today,
Leigh Anne, what do you
What
think?
say
I don't
you?
think infinity is a high enough number for this movie. You couldn't film 2 minutes of this movie today. Back then, I think it was accepted because it was Mel Brooks, but he had a really hard time getting it made. Yeah, he had to fight for this one. And
Is that true? Okay.
MGM said they would do it if he cut out certain scenes. And he didn't cut out the scenes. But he's Mel Brooks. So they let him go ahead with it. And it only opened in 2 or 3 cities the first time. And then they rolled it back out once it had decent reviews. So I think for the people watching it, maybe a 5 or a 6, but the people making it, it was an 11.
Well,
Yeah.
see, just go ahead. I'll let you in a second though. What would you, if you have either of you ever really ever listened or seen
Yes, I have.
Richard Pryor's stand up from that time frame? Because so seems to me right in line with what his stand up was. So that's why I think it's
But at
back
that
then it was
time,
probably
stand-up wasn't on
not
TV.
registering.
It was, you went to the show.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, or you bought the record.
That's a fair point.
But you were not seeing it
Or you bought
on
the
any
record,
TV
yeah.
channel or movies. So
Or movies, maybe.
yeah, this is the movie that allowed every
this
movie
was kind of
after it.
groundbreaking then, in a way.
So
No, seriously,
There
yeah.
you go. All right, Mike, what say you?
Yeah, I mean, this is the most obvious for today. It's a 10, and it would be like one of those old cartoons where you would hit the hammer and it would just bang and like go up through the top and like blow out, or you put the thermometer in somebody's mouth and the end explodes. I mean, you
Right.
like both of you guys said, you couldn't, or like Leigh Anne said, I mean, you couldn't make, when people say that with certain movies, it sounds like hyperbole, but you could not make this movie today. You just couldn't do it. It would not be allowed. For back then, I get what both of you are saying. I think because it carried the Mel Brooks stamp of approval, let's say, that it was accepted. I also think because of the time, it was a very different time, and this was 50 years ago. So, like I was saying to Leigh Anne before we started recording, I watched on the extras, there was a spin-off of this that they tried to make into a sitcom called Black Bart. And with Lou
You're
Gossett,
kidding me.
No, with Lou Gossett Jr. playing the part of the sheriff. And they're dropping the N-word on a sitcom, which would have probably been airing 8 or 8:30 at night, I would think, on a major network. So it was definitely a different time. So when I say I think the ZMED-O-METER for 1974 would maybe be like a 3 or a 4, I just mean I think there were less people who were complaining about. I mean, I would bet my life that there weren't that many people who were worried about the F word being used to make fun of homosexuals at all. I'm sure they were a little nervous with the N word, but like we also said, there are still people probably now who don't get that they're doing that because they're making fun of the people who are saying it, and they're not just trying to shock you with it. So when I give it like a 3, I just mean it was a very different time, and I think, one, like we said, you could get away with it because it was Mel Brooks. If it was just some schmo who it was their first movie they were directing, I don't think they'd be able to do it, or writing or producing. I don't think they'd be able to do it. But because Mel Brooks was doing it, he's going to get a little leeway, and he has the clout to say, well, I'm going to do this, and I'm not cutting out scenes you want me to cut out. But I also think that attitudes were different then, and then for better or for worse, they're different now. So you couldn't make this. And it's kind of unfortunate, and that gets into another another discussion that you couldn't make it today just because you don't want to see those words used, but you wish there was somebody like Mel Brooks and Richard Pryor and others who were intelligent and talented enough to make a movie that's making fun of these attitudes and stuff,
Mhm.
get away with it, and maybe be a little risky. I think with the way things are now, with the way studios are now, with their conglomerates, with so many businesses and everything else behind them, you're going to find less and less risky type of movies. And I'm not saying that you should be using the words that are used back then, because those are words that shouldn't be used anymore.
I mean, we
we're
don't
obviously
even
not
use
using
them
because
here
you just shouldn't use
when
them.
we're talking about the movie that uses
But
them.
they were used to good yeah, exactly. Yep. But they were
They had a
used to
purpose.
good effect in the movie to try to get a point across. Yep.
Well, let me throw this out though. Definitely he was using the N-word to mock, that attitude and racism. But I don't know about the F word. He kind of seemed to be using that. I don't know if he was making fun of anything with that. It seemed like he was using that as as the mockery statement it was for the day.
Yeah, I would agree with you with that. I don't know if they were as culturally awakened with the F word and that type of culture
No,
that they
100%.
were with the N word. So I will agree with that. But
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
also say, and I'm not trying to make excuses for people, but it was 1974. And that was that was how it was. But they also don't, they're making fun of it, but they're not lingering on it. Like they're not going out of their way to keep on you know what I
keep
mean?
using it, but
yeah. I mean, it's in small doses, but I agree with you. I don't know if
I think it was
their
kind of
intentions
the
were so noble with the F
early
word
beginnings
Right.
of
in the
like
movie.
Pride and trying to get things more socially acceptable.
Yep.
So it's a commentary on the time they were in.
Yep. So you
That's
can't
true.
have these kind of conversations with like Revenge of the Nerds or Bachelor Party. That's what the difference is between a movie like Police Academy and a movie like Blazing Saddles.
So I think I know the answer to this question, but I'll ask it. Like you and I, Mike, talked about, with Police Academy or Nerds. Is there any way you could slice and dice this to make it acceptable in today's lens? And I think we agreed that Nerds, you might be able to slice and dice it and
No.
make it into something that's acceptable. I don't think there's any prayer with this movie to get anything.
I think
it'd be a 20-minute special.
Yeah, I think
after school special to have this.
With what we've done so far, I think Bachelor Party you could cut stuff out, switch it around.
Okay.
I think you could. Police Academy I think is the easiest. I think you could
I think you could make
get it out there. Nerds, I think you could get it out there. This, and you know what? I'd love to hear.
I don't know.
I'd love to hear from people who listen. Like, do you think you could get away with? Are you saying could you remake it, or could you make something like it, or could you just?
Could you edit the movie as it is and have something
They
left?
did.
And I think with Police Academy, we felt like we could.
Yeah.
And I felt like with Nerds, maybe.
Yeah.
This, I don't think there's anything left but a 20-minute after school special.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. I mean, you don't see this on any of the. At least I don't. I don't think you see this on the cable stations that much, because if you're cutting it out or you're replacing the dialogue with something else, you're just losing it. It's taken away from.
Yeah, there's nothing left.
Yeah, the base on which they built everything
There's
else
just
upon.
too
so
much.
It's like, why even try? Because it's just not going to be the same. So
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, there's nothing. There's no meat on the bone.
And just the way he writes, I mean, there's too much, and it's coming at you all the time in quick succession. So, yeah, I don't think you could edit this and really get it out there.
Have anything left?
Yeah, it just wouldn't have the same effect. It wouldn't be funny at all.
Right.
And it shows with the like I said, I watched the pilot. The pilot was not funny at all. It was really not that great. It switches stuff around. He's a black sheriff, but it's not the Gene Wilder character. They kind of have a character that's like Madeline Kahn, but it's different. She runs like the
Did they have a Mongo?
dance hall. No, they didn't have a Mongo. They have like a
Okay.
mayor of the town who's kind of evil, and that's who he's kind of fighting against. And I had said this to Leigh Anne beforehand. Lou Gossett Jr. plays it to me like how I think Richard Pryor would have played it. He plays it differently than Cleavon Little, and I didn't find myself drawn to his character, and I didn't think he was as funny as Cleavon Little was. So you could see why it wasn't ever picked up. But it was interesting to watch it just to see them.
Was Mel Brooks involved with it at all?
He was not. The guy who wrote the original screenplay that Mel Brooks bought and then rewrote wrote the
What's
pilot
interesting,
episode, and I think
you
he's
could
one of the
never make this
co-creators.
movie today.
Okay.
But people love this movie across generations. It's just as funny and relevant today to our kids, adult kids, as it was to us back then.
Yep.
It's absolutely timeless. The jokes make sense.
Yeah.
So I think people will keep watching this movie forever.
Yeah, I think this is one that's gonna live on, and that's what I said. Like I said, with the 4 movies we've done, this falls into that category of you can't make it, or what are we gonna watch that is unacceptable today? But it's like I said, it's in the National Registry for cultural relevance.
That's incredible.
Because of what Leigh Anne just said. I mean, it crosses generations of people appreciating it, and I think it's going to keep on going on.
But I think I also wholeheartedly agree with what you both said, that this was written, directed, and starring Mick Jameson. It would have been in the can, but Mel Brooks's clout, I think, really is the pontoon that lifts this boat. I don't think anybody else that's unless those Hollywood filmmakers of his equal, like I say a Spielberg or the more modern, say Chris Nolan or something like that. But I think that's very much given the time and given that I think you said at the beginning, Mel Brooks was on a heater. Yep. I definitely think this boys this movie that makes it still what it is. Just like Leigh Anne was saying, it's timeless and so forth. I think it would have disappeared into ether if Mel Brooks wasn't attached to it.
Yeah, I mean, basically what you're saying. I mean, somebody with less talent.
I'd just say less clout. I mean, you could.
Yeah, but even less talent too. I mean, you could see somebody trying to make a movie like this, but if you don't have the talent that Mel Brooks had, it's not going to hit the same way, or it's not going to be funny in the same way, or it's going to come off as more mean, or it's going to come off as
even those particular actors.
It was just right place,
I can't
right time,
imagine
and
anyone
right
but Gene Wilder playing it.
Yep. Yep. And that's a big thing. They get you on their side, and you root for them, and that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, this was cool.
I'm sorry.
And again, like the first
this
3
is
movies,
the most serious episode to date.
I know. Like the first 3 movies we no, it's great.
No, it's good. It's a good thing. Well, this is a more serious movie.
I'm trying to segue into comments on the other episodes, but I would love to hear from people out there to let us know what they think of Blazing Saddles, what they think, if they think it could be made today, or how they think its legacy is, and do they think even in 1974 that it should have been higher up on the ZMED-O-METER? So hopefully we get comments on that, because I'd love to hear what other people think.
I'd hope and pray that someone of color will chime in on this, because I would love to hear their take.
I
their
wanted
perspective
to have
on it.
Chris Ryans, who I've done the Nice Guys with, but I couldn't get him on. I would have liked. I felt bad that we're 3 white people talking about it.
At least you have a token female. It's something.
Sorry. That's right.
Had to get the chick.
That's right. We couldn't get the black guy, so we had to get a female.
There you go.
I'm kidding. But talking about comments and stuff like that, we did get another 5-star review on Apple, which was nice. So thank you. I don't know who it was who gave us, because they didn't write a review. They just gave us a 5-star review. So please go on Apple Podcasts and rate us. Give us a 5-star review. Give us a 1-star review if you want. Just leave us some comments. Tell us what you think. Tell us what movies you think we should do. Tell us if you think we're doing a good job or not. Tell us if you think that we're annoying or not. It'll probably be my wife. My wife will write in and be like, "Yes, you're annoying. Please stop." I was surprised because I thought we would get more comments about Revenge of the Nerds. We only got one comment, and it was actually from our guest, Leigh Anne, who's on right now, who on Twitter, I will not call it X, said, "Nerds! 1984, 7.5 on the ZMED-O-METER, 2024, pegged at 10.
Yeah.
It wasn't that risque for the time. It was released, but it absolutely could not be made today without rioting in the streets," which I think is true. So I could say to Leigh Anne in person, thank you for commenting, and thank you for giving us your ZMED-O-METER rating for Revenge of the Nerds. With all that, saying that, I hope that people comment and talk about Blazing Saddles. We are
No one
on
should call it X.
Twitter. Again, I will not call it X.
Nobody does.
No.
Yeah,
We are.
right, Leanne. Nobody does.
Yeah, we're on Twitter as Sleazebag Cinema, and that's at SLEAZEEBAG. So at Sleazebag. And if you want to email us, we're at SLEAZEE1, so sleazy1 at gmail.com. So please send us your comments, send us your ideas, send us the movies you want us to do. And I think the next movie, are we going to go from the classic Blazing Saddles to Chachi? Is that what we're really going to do? Are we going to go from Mel Brooks to Willie Ames? Are we really going to do Zaps next? Is that what we're doing?
It's within what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know.
Oh shit! So what's the people say? It's something within your, not your wheelhouse, but it's
I don't know.
It's on target for us, on point for Sleazebag Cinema.
Stay on target. It all comes back to Star Wars too. Yeah. Only the Star Wars I've watched, but that's a conversation for another time. Yeah, so I think we are going to do Zapped the next time. But Lord. But before you hear us the next time, I want to thank our first guest ever, Leigh Anne.
Yes, thank you, Leigh Anne.
Thank you for coming on and bringing some respectability to the place. Thank you very much.
Some desperately needed.
We were desperately in need of respectability, and you brought it in.
I'll be happy to come back anytime you need me.
In droves, that's right. Anytime you want to come back. Now, anytime. Tell us what movie you want to do, and I am sure we will be up for it. And we'll be talking about MASH on Twitter and everything like that. I have a feeling you and I eventually are going to be on a podcast together about MASH.
Mick got me my first guest spot on Best Care 4077. That was my Virgin podcast. No, it's great. And now they want me back for next season.
Sorry. No, I'm kidding.
What episode?
I did Hot Lips and Empty Arms.
What episode was it, Leanne? It was
they needed a female perspective for the Margaret.
So wait, is this
is my second ever?
Is this only your second podcast ever? You're a lot better than me, and I've done a lot of podcasts.
I was very, very nervous the first one.
Keep on doing it, man. You're doing great.
About half as much this one. So, I'll be good.
Okay, good. Yeah. So the next time we have you on, you'll just be like sitting, like leaning back in a chair, smoking a cigarette and drinking whiskey. Like, it's fine. It's all good.
I'm on Twitter.
So where can people find you if you want them to find you on the internets?
Fair warning, I'm atheist, liberal, and loud. But I'm kind of funny. So, but that's really the only place I'm on.
And if you talk of,
I don't believe in any of
If
I
you
don't
talk
believe in it. I don't believe in atheism.
yeah,
Well,
Or-
I think it's a famous Hawkeye line, isn't it, Mike?
yeah, I
I
think
don't believe in
And what
atheism.
was it when Father Mulcahy, when BJ
That
said,
crazy
Hawkeye tells me you're the
agnostic.
best chaplain in the army? He's like, that crazy agnostic. But yes, if you go on there and talk about MASH with Leigh Anne, you'll have a good time. And Andrew, any place you want us to find you, or are you just going to lurk
here.
up there in the dark?
I'm here in the sleaze bag.
I will say you look kind of creepy. All we see is your
You're
silhouette
behind the trash can somewhere.
That's right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, it's just a silhouette that we're seeing on the screen here.
That's the way I like it.
He's like the shadow. Only the shadow knows.
Yeah.
I thought it was like the wind.
Yeah, the wind just broke its leg.
Its leg.
See, that could have been you.
There you go.
All right, before we start going into 27 hours straight of MASH quotes, I
MASH.
want to thank everybody for listening, and come back for our next episode, Zapped. And until then, I don't have anything witty to say. So just have a great night, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.
Let's face it, I'm tired. Would you care for another Schnitzengruben?
No, thank you. 15 is my limit on Schnitzengruben.